The atom bomb exploded in 1945 like this exactly, when new projectile rings made of 30.5 kilograms heavy uranium-235 were mechanically pushed about and then again mechanically pressed into 6 target rings. So, 30.5 kilograms of uranium-235 thrusted via the wolfram carbide disc projectile and the steel back of the projectile, which in turn accelerated through the cordite propellant charge and through 4 plutonium-beryllium initiators, which were crushed over the plug by the projectile rings. All of this apparently started the magical nuclear procedure. This happened 600 meters above ground as the bomb itself dropped with 324.7 meters per second. Why these new projectile rings did not drop by themselves due to gravity is not quite clear. Do you understand? It's so simple. Shove, throw, or push 9 uranium-235 projectile rings supported by exploding cordite towards 6 uranium-235 target rings and press them into a wolfram carbide pipe. Sleeve, disc, plug, hence nuclear fission, and then boom! And don't forget, you absolutely have to tighten the lock nut on the nose of that steel brace. Stupid, idiotic, lying propaganda. It doesn't work. Metal in contact with metal, be it gold, silver, lead, iron, any kind of uranium, including uranium-235, does not split exponentially and certainly doesn't explode initiated by polonium or beryllium, not even when it is compacted mechanically and definitely not suddenly. So, the atom bomb dropped on the 6th of August 1945 from an altitude of 9,255 meters in 57 seconds and detonated precisely at 600 meters exactly as shown here. Would it have dropped for 2 seconds more, it would have hit the ground and would have been destroyed, and would have never exploded. Absolutely believable. Let's take a look at the places in which nuclear explosions allegedly took place. Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Does this look like something where an explosion with a temperature of 1 million Kelvin happened? Looks more like Dresden in 1945 to me. The windows in the center of the Bank of Japan building are broken, not the outer ones. A bomb strong enough to sweep away brick constructions, yet too weak to bend trees. Yeah, sure. It is stated that something between 200 and 400 B-29 bombers flew over the city between 2 and 4 a.m. and dropped 1,500 tons of napalm bombs. Another interesting story is the one about German physicist Klaus Fuchs, who emigrated to England in the 1930s and participated in a highly confidential development of an atom bomb. He was also in charge of the very unsuccessful Manhattan Project, slipped informations to the Russians, and landed in jail for 14 years. And so, Stalin, just like the Americans, was boldly able to work on his version of the fake atom bomb, knowing that the enemy was just bluffing. I'll just skip the idiotic part about Einstein and his E=mc². That stuff about matter converted into energy that brings forth a total of energy according to the mass multiplied by the speed of light times square. He's just another part of this dumbing down game. For decades, the US and the Japanese governments have spent more than hundreds of millions of dollars to understand how the radiation of the nuclear bomb harmed the people of Hiroshima or Nagasaki. One version is that these bombs were never dropped. And where has it disappeared to? The radiation. Even stranger is the fact that the Big Five in the UN, those with permanent veto powers, all happen to be governments authorized to have nuclear weapons. But a rogue who thinks evil, I suppose. Please take a look at the B-61 atom bomb that has just been made steerable by the Americans for $1 billion, but still has immobile tail fins. Another fun fact, it's absolutely safe to take a ride around in a hangar full of atom bombs for publicity. The conclusion, in order to cover up the truth about nuclear bombs, the US government created CCD, Civil Censorship Detachment, right after the occupation of Japan. CCD was confidential. No one was to know that there was censorship in Japan. Anyone who took photos of the devastation in Hiroshima and Nagasaki or claimed that the bomb was a fraud was simply incarcerated or executed because they were disturbing public peace. Anyone who cannot see the connection to the contemporary events in our days, anyone who believes in the official explanation of 9/11, the moon landing, or the assassination of John F. Kennedy, obviously has no trouble in believing that the collision of two small uranium plates made a giant explosion of 100 million degrees Celsius possible that disintegrated everything within a radius of several hundreds of kilometers. To put it simply, it's an enormous deceit to keep people in fear and compliance.
So notice this edit right there. It makes more sense if this was just made in a studio, and you notice the music just overly dramatic and some kind of line coming across the water there. There's people watching, and I mean, this is it's just not real, you know. And there's this light. They're manipulating light, which you can do with video. That looks just like a TNT explosion to me. And now, of course, we have the Egyptian obelisk. Now we'll have a lens flare. So a lot of these start, see that? It just starts with a lens flare. And I could do that myself on my videos. It's just a huge, bright light, so you can't see anything. What looks like smoke, clouds. It's just light. In fact, you can see that there's like a ripple in the middle of that. That looks completely fake. Like a line in the middle of the mushroom part, the top of the mushroom. And it was, they just add light to it. You know, there's some background film footage of clouds. And then it's video compositing. They just add on a layer of something else. The other image of this explosion, which is most likely a miniature explosion done in a lab in the movie studio, or a real TNT explosion with lots of TNT done out in the actual desert or something. Either way, it's just an explosion. And even that, kind of the middle of the stem there, that looks completely fake. It's just propaganda is all it is. It's just lies, deception, and propaganda. And I do believe that this deception will come to play in the end times deception, where there's going to be wars and rumors of war. There's going to be a rumor of nuclear war, and nuclear weapons don't exist, so it's all going to be fake, and it's going to lead people to this panic stage. Probably, most likely Iran threatening to nuke Jerusalem, right, or Israel. And that kind of makes sense. That's what Obama's role, one of his jobs, was to kind of set up that scenario by allowing them to have nuclear power. So now they're going to make a nuke and threaten to blow up Israel, and Trump's going to get involved and stop it, and then Russia gets involved. So the world will be on the brink of nuclear war, just like JFK with the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then the counterfeit Messiah will roll in and save the day, possibly as some kind of ancient alien type of scenario thrown in as well for good measure. Here's another one with the lens flare. You can't see anything. That's easy to do. You can do that effect. Anyone could do that effect. And that's what happens when you point a camera at a sun. That almost looks like the sun, a close-up of the sun. And see those clouds, that's a layer, I think. Those clouds, those dark clouds in the foreground are one layer of film. And then there in the background is the sun, or whatever that actually is, the bright light. And they're just manipulating the light. Could be light on smoke at a real high contrast rate. Now, somebody with more knowledge of video effects would know exactly what they're doing more than me. I'm just pointing this out there, getting you to at least question the existence of nuclear weapons. At least question it, And then look at how it fades to black like that, too. And it always fades to black, and you see that light. Now, to me, it just does not look real at all. So they're faking these nuclear tests in a film studio in the Hollywood Hills that most people didn't know about. And now look at this, these buildings. Again, the way the smoke comes and stuff like this. These are miniatures, I believe, like they did in Star Wars, and that they continue to do, right? These are miniature models that are just exploded. I mean, this is a movie set, essentially. It's Hollywood, right? Laurel Canyon is in the Hollywood Hills. And people at real movie studios worked at this facility. I mean, it's all documented. People at all the major movie studios also worked here at this place, So Hollywood is essentially a division of the CIA, or vice versa. Maybe the CIA is a division of Hollywood, who knows? But they're all basically in the same, they have the same role of propaganda. Right there again, just smoke, light, and clouds. That's all you see. I mean, there's no proof that that's real, and it doesn't certainly it does not look real at all. That light is just a real high contrast light, smoke, paintings, animation, however they did it, layering most likely. In 9/11, they used video compositing, layering, essentially. And it's slow motion, I believe. Slow motion explosions. That's why the clouds barely even move. That's just a slow motion conventional explosion is all that is. And then, people, I've been to Hiroshima, Nagasaki. I've been there. Beautiful cities, by the way. And all that was just, firebombing, traditional, conventional warfare. They wiped out Tokyo, supposedly, and killed 300,000 people in Dresden and all those things. So if those are real, then that's all they did there. Who knows? A lot of theories out there. The whole thing is fake, so maybe that's possible as well. So all you're seeing here is bright lights, lens flaring. Maybe I'll add in a few lens flares myself. You can see I can do it here on my PC. They could do it back then, okay? There was a state-of-the-art facility. See, that's just smoke. Maybe they're just shining a spotlight on some smoke in a studio. Who knows? Or they're just adding in the color and saturating it. And then, of course, you have the sun and the sky anyway, so you just point the camera at the sun, add some music to it and some sounds of explosions. I mean, this looks like the sun for a starter, and then they kind of expand upon that. So now you got the human guinea pigs out there. There's your flash of light. That's all that was a flash of light, lens flare. And now they're going to look at the thing, and that's just I don't know what those things on the left are either, but that's just a video effect. You have people in front, and then there's like in the old days they used to have like a video screen, and they would just be on the stage and a video playing behind them. That could be what that is, or a little bit more advanced than that, but not much more advanced than that. It's just layering. Two films layered on top of one another. One in the foreground, one in the background. Now they're going to walk towards it. Yeah, walk towards the nuke. Go shoot it. You got to shoot the nuke. They're not in the same place at the same time. Those are two different videos layered on top of one another, I believe. Puff of smoke that would come from any conventional explosion. Flash of light. That's all it is an artificial flash of light. That flash of light is not coming from the source of the explosion. It's just an artificial lens flare. Probably a miniature, I'd imagine, and maybe they have some way to get that column, that mushroom stalk kind of thing going on. Could be using airflow in a controlled environment. But even a TNT explosion does have a mushroom cloud effect. Now here's some real TNT, actually. I got this from a YouTube video. This is just regular TNT. All right, so you actually do have fire and the smoke up on top. And you're going to see this actually kind of turns into a mushroom cloud anyway. See that? Now, if they should have panned back a little bit more, but there you basically have a mushroom cloud from TNT. That was quite a bit of it. The nuclear footage is slow motion TNT, I believe. And whatever it is, it's just not real, So a lot of people have figured this out. There's actually quite a few videos out there already on this topic, and I only really came across this a few months ago. Haven't had time to do tons of research into it, but just looking at these images here and the fact that it's made in a Hollywood studio, it makes me believe that nuclear weapons, in fact, do not exist. And something to think about, at least something to question. If you haven't thought of this before, at least maybe hopefully you just question it a little bit, look into it more yourself. You can look at a lot of this footage can be found on YouTube, the actual original footage from Lookout Mountain Laboratories in Hollywood, California, giving us all the best propaganda and deception that money can buy.
"21 days after the New Mexico dress rehearsal, a lone B-29 was over Hiroshima carrying an atomic bomb. At 8:15 in the morning of August 6, Japanese time, the first atomic bomb hit an enemy target. The bomb was aimed to explode above 0 point, a spot in the city at the junction of the Motoyiso and Ota rivers. The bomb was intentionally set to explode well above the 0 point to dissipate its radioactivity. Here is the pictorial record of the result. At 0 point, directly beneath the explosion, The soldier in the scene is pointing at the spot from which all damage to the surrounding area was measured in terms of distance from the center of the blast. Within a mile of 0 point, the devastation speaks for itself. But in these very ruins, Army cameramen have found and filmed pictorial evidence that tells in twisted steel and stone the effect of death-dealing atomic power. Reinforced concrete buildings seem to have withstood the explosion fairly well, the damage varying with their distance from 0 point. Within an area of a mile to a mile and a half, this type of building was the only type to withstand complete demolition and destruction. The destructive circle within a mile from 0 point had a few notable exceptions, mainly reinforced concrete. On the edge of the area of greatest damage was a landmark, the Red Cross Hospital, which never ceased functioning although it sustained damage. Today it dominates the desert of a debris that was Hiroshima. Another notable exception to the general demolition was the Higashi Railroad Station in East Hiroshima, a mile and a half from the center of the blast. This building, however, suffered extensive damage. The twisted steel beams and concrete wall show the effects of the tremendous concussion. What's left of the Commercial Museum, within 2/10 of a mile of 0 point, also gives indication of the tremendous push of the explosion. Amazingly enough, bridges did not suffer too badly at Hiroshima. This steel rail bridge 1 mile from 0 point had the side toward the explosion virtually blasted by flying particles, which removed almost all the paint. But the side away from the explosion did not need a new paint job. Roads in the area fared better than buildings or bridges. Shortly after the fires died down, traffic was resumed. Today, these highways through the ruins are again in use. Beside our military traffic trudge the survivors of vanished Hiroshima, the first city in history to be atom-bombed into oblivion.
Do nuclear bombs exist? Your immediate answer is yes. But how do you know? During the mid-20th century, television and movie watchers were bombarded with imagery of what was purported to be atomic test footage. But what were they really watching? They couldn't rewind a videotape or rescan through a video on their computer. So what option did they have but to accept these images at their face value? Now we have opportunity to scrutinize these images to see if they hold up to analysis. Take a look at these trees. Now what was that? And who turned the camera? They're in awfully straight lines, aren't they? Now this must be a different blast because it's coming from a different direction. Wait, now they've put it back. But those are the same trees we saw in the first clip, aren't they? And now this. First they showed us these trees that they panned left on. Then they show us these trees that look like they should be next to a model train. Notice how straight the rows are. It looks artificial to me. Then they show us these trees again. Where's the forward camera? And then back to these trees again. And then they show us what looks to be a real forest that's been chopped down or torn down. Now take a look at this. It's footage of the first H-bomb test called Ivy Mike. Watch how it changes. That's a composite. Then it morphs into this. It looks like a completely separate explosion. Now take a look at the frame before the explosion and then the one after. These frames were cut together. Why? Then this frame was cut to this, which looks like the sun to me. It looks like they're zooming in on the sun. Maybe a composite because the clouds aren't moving. Then they introduced some sort of liquid. It looks like a laboratory concoction in composite with the sun. Next is Operation Dominic Fireballs in the Yukon. What does that look like to you? Watch it again. It's the sun. Now here's Operation Greenhouse. These guys are getting all ready to see what looks to be the sun again. The sun seems to start to expand. And who headed up the whole program? None other than J. Robert Oppenheimer of the Oppenheimer family, who is reputed to have been the original financiers who got the Rothschilds started in Frankfurt, Germany in the 18th century.
He should do his duty, and to impress him, takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
You're thinking, what about Hiroshima? Is that Hiroshima? Is that Hiroshima? That looks like Hiroshima, but it looks like it's been carpet bombed. Check out this image of Rotterdam. Was that a nuclear bomb? Now compare it to this image of Hiroshima. Actually, this isn't Hiroshima, it's Tokyo after firebombing in 1945. If you accept that FDR might have had foreknowledge of the bombing at Pearl Harbor, maybe you might want to leave room for the possibility that his propaganda machine might have created the myth of atomic bombs. There's no question that the powers that be have ballistics with tremendous explosive capacity. But this shot, for example, could easily be high-volume dynamite. And what are we looking at here? Take a look at this house again. Whatever was strong enough to blow it to smithereens wasn't strong enough to even shake the camera. And look how high up the camera position is. Are we looking at another model? Now look at this bus and this car. Whatever's blowing them up is not moving the camera. And this building seems to blow up from the inside. Everything gets blown every which way except for the camera. Except look in this shot, it seems to tilt up a little bit. Now this is one of my favorites. Watch the two guys behind the glass. Who's filming him? Isn't he being exposed to all that rocket fuel? Anyways, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. If you're hell-bent on believing that they can blow up the world at the push of a button, then go ahead. But next time you hear a politician justifying the invasion of a country based on the fact that they supposedly have weapons of mass destruction, realize that they're not only lying about the other country supposedly possessing weapons of mass destruction, they also may be lying about the very existence of weapons of mass destruction. And why don't they call them nuclear bombs anymore?
That have importance in understanding the spellcraft, the hoaxcraft that the powers that be have implemented on the public. There is none really as big as the nuke. The nuke idea that somebody can push a button in Washington and within minutes or hours at the minimum, you'll be blown to bits. Absolutely blown to bits, just at the whim of the president with the black suitcase, or Vladimir Putin, or even better still, some terrorist with a suitcase bomb, as we've seen this whole nuclear thing develop over the years, and then down to the idea they put it in weapons, depleted uranium, dirty bombs, i.e. terrorism. But we've never seen any of this other than Hiroshima, other than these little fake explosions that they show us over the years, with houses getting blown away, but the camera never does. Yes, we see a major fail in the View Club here too, so another challenge to the View Club. How about this one? You see all hoaxes in Hollywood and Boston and Sandy Hook, but not the nuke one, because too many of them run with the nuke fear, with Armageddon ideas of nuclear destruction. Just such a popular idea for so many channels. For them to cover the nuke hoax is just not going to be in their remit for many reasons. Look at the shape of the thing in there now. Look at this head looking at you. It's like a bird. Look, tweeting at you. All of this computer generated stuff, and in their day they used other methods, of course, artistic methods on film, but they always used embedding. You see that 9/11, devil's heads. We saw that in the Ukraine at the Maiden event. It's just been so many times. Look at that there now. It's straight out of Beatrice Potter or something. It looks like a rabbit nearly. And here we go. Every one of these things is always different. Look, turned into a skull head at the end. And they morph. They're big on this, I'm telling you. People laugh, but that's just how it is. Look at this one here. This has no ground-based contact. They must have exploded in the air, did they? It's just amazing more people haven't looked at this. Really, you know, the whole thing about it. Look at this one here. They're always looking so different. That looks like a big tree. It sort of matches this here, doesn't it? Just watch a bit of it. Oh, very slow, this one. Very slow indeed. No one was moving at all. Very strange, isn't it? Must just be a still. Oh, look at this. Here we go. Straight out of Fukushima style things we've seen and war movies. Look, that's a little model. You can clearly see that. You know, the special effects from Hollywood. Special effects from Hollywood, but it's enough to con all the public. But in this day and age, you think people have analysed this better. You just have to look for a minute and you can see just what you saw there. A little model getting eaten by water somehow in a big tank. It's hard to know exactly how they're produced that. Is that all solid or is that a lot of steam? It could be too for that one. Look at this flash here. Here's the flash and the ring, the great ring. You know that one, the ring of Saturn. Look, there it is. Some of my followers will love that. There it is. There's your Saturn, always present. The big globe. See, that ring evaporated quickly, didn't it? Look, this is glowing on forever, not expanding at all. It's just all here. It's a pyrotechnic device of some sort, but I think it's just done in mini scale. It could be done various ways. I'm thinking a lamp behind a few sheets of paper, you know, with cutouts, etc., you know, especially when it comes to Britain. Britain's marvellous at this stuff. You just got to look at their old movies, their old war movies, etc. They're fantastic. There's plenty of documentaries you can watch on how these things work.
Once you start a lie, you've got to build on the lie, and the lie starts getting bigger. In fact, exponentially bigger, bigger and bigger. And you can never tell the truth because then you've exposed the lie that you've been telling for years. But why do you want to expose a great lie that makes a lot of money? Now, observing these two explosions, these two different nuclear tests, one thing's very obvious. There's certainly a huge colour shift. One is red, one is yellow. So they had different metals in the explosion to create the different colours. Now, I would think that they would all be relatively the same. Certainly the one on the left really just doesn't look right. But in fact, these mushroom clouds aren't right. Because look at, there's no explosion really much on the ground if you look at the one on the right and left really. You get a clearer vision of ground level, of course, on the right. See, it's all sort of a puff of smoke in the air if you really examine it. And even if these are fair dinkum pictures, which is probably debatable in itself, but let's just take that they are real depictions of explosions, they're not that big, are they? It's just a puff of smoke in the air. It's some sort of like firework device, it looks more to me. There's not a big explosion on the ground outwards. It's just this big cloud, because that's what people have come to expect. That's what looks effective and has a certain scare factor. Now, this is taking mushroom clouds to another level. This is the freestanding mushroom cloud. Now, this is amongst nuclear explosion shots. You see, I don't think people have ever really looked at these explosions against other explosions, all the different explosions in the different countries. And certainly if you go to any of the Chinese stuff, well, you're going to see something telling there, just like you see with Jade Rabbit. It's not quite the quality, because in China they can sell it easier. A few loud bangs and everybody gets excited and goes, oh, wow, wow. There's a little bit more discernment in the West. People want a little bit more spectacular and real convincing looking imagery. But I mean, the floating mushroom cloud here is way strange. Why the gap there? Is this Photoshop? Is this reality? It looks very, very peculiar. And if this was the only image that was peculiar, but every image you can drag up and you can go through yourself and look under image search, and you'll start to see, just like 9/11, so many different smokes, so many different looks. It just doesn't look right. But if all that variance in the look of the explosion and the fake look of those two that I showed you in the beginning there doesn't convince you that this nuclear weapons industry is nothing more than a drain for money on the public strings and a method of control and fear, here's the aftermath of the explosion at Bikini Atoll. Now, what was glaringly obvious to me straight away is how come one area is just so green and this area here is just so burnt? People say, oh, it's just the angle and the dangle. Well, I can see this has been flame thrown. That's really what it looks like. And not only that, those trees have been cut with a chainsaw or an axe. Look at the angles on the trees. It's how you cut them so they fall. And you drag them away. They're not snapped by any explosion. That's absolutely balderdash. If they were snapped, they'd be ripped and teared, and there'd be bits of bark teared. I've worked on trees most of my life. I know a lot about clearing trees and what ground looks like. And we get bushfires here and people go and cut some of the trees and that stumpy look there looks exactly like what I've seen many, many times. It certainly doesn't look like a nuclear blast in respect to those palm trees and other trees over in the yonder, in the distance as it were, are just perfectly sitting there. This is supposed to be pretty recent after the blast if it's all cindered like this. In this tropical world, it only takes a matter of weeks and there's little tips and things and everything carpets up pretty green pretty quick. So this is within a week or two at the most of the so-called blast. And we have perfect green vegetation and chainsaw cut trees and just a flamethrower cindered look. In a fairly small area too, I might add, but enough to convince the unknowing public of the 50s and 60s. And they already had them in duck and cover mode. So I mean, a little bit of bikini atoll, and there's that old little sex card they throw in, a bit of bikini. And that was aptly chosen, no doubt in my mind whatsoever. So there you go, you see. You'll have to stay tuned for my next video where we'll really get into a little bit of the science of it all. But I just wanted to show the basic things here of why it's so wrong. That is balderdash. That has been cut with a chainsaw. Now, you see, when you've got one really big hoax going like this, you've got to add the old shooters in the woods. There's nothing like a few little conflicting stories of heroism, stories which build dialectic, and stories which give what you're doing credibility. Fear factory number one. And it's like a monkey on everyone's shoulder. Isn't it good when you can see they can't push a button and destroy the world in seconds, like they say?
You know what it is about radioactivity that makes people crazy? It's invisible. You can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't smell it, but it can get you anyway. In this sense, it is the boogeyman. Further, almost no one knows anything about radiation, and so quite understandably, people fill in those blanks of what you don't know can kill you by playing it safe and overestimating the hazard from the radiation. And this already distorted image of the hazards of radioactivity is fanned by the paranoid ramblings of crazies, and especially of the paranoia merchants trying to whip up this fear to make people really scared such that they can capitalize on that fear.
Fluoride Shield, Survival Shield, and all the products at InfoWarsLife.com grew out of my quest to try to find the very best compounds from God's cornucopia to protect myself and my family. And from our research, I believe we are bringing you the best, highest quality products. And you have that commitment from Alex Jones and the entire InfoWars crew.
Wow, a personal promise from Alex Jones based on the best research from both him and the entire InfoWars crew. And of course, the small print just reinforces how much confidence they have in their research claims. Right? Actually, no. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
And from our research, I believe we are bringing you the best, highest quality products. And you have that commitment from Alex Jones and the entire InfoWars crew.
Meanwhile, let's take a look at the worst disaster in nuclear history, Chernobyl. As you can see from space, the radiation level is so high that there is no plant life for hundreds of miles around the reactor. Well, actually, no. Indeed, it turns out that the radiation levels recorded directly outside the plant where this disaster happened can be so low that they are comparable to those that you would get cruising on a commercial jet. And the last measurement I can personally vouch for, as I measured it myself. And for many folks, their principal fear of nuclear power is that this is going to happen, even though this is absolutely impossible. More on that later. But the paranoia merchants still feast on people's insecurity about radiation, and this can lead to really quite crazy folks getting quite large audiences.
Just keep filling that restaurant up. If I had a cup of 238 here, I would die before I finished that sentence. I can put that cup of 238 in a restaurant, it'll kill everybody in the restaurant inside of an hour. Even if they just walked in and left, they would die an hour later. And that would go on for 4.5 billion years times 10, because of the way it decays, right?
Well, let's start with the bloody obvious stuff. Where do you think this uranium ore comes from? You dig it out of the ground, where it's been for. Initially, it's refined as yellow cake. Guess what colour that is? It was initially produced in huge quantities when it was mined in an effort to get radium, which is basically radioactive stuff that glows in the dark. Stuff that makes this clock radioactive.
I actually leave it there, and what you'll find is it'll bury the needle.
However, there really weren't that many uses for this element uranium. But curiously, while refining tons of this material that they dug out of the ground, they made the stunning observation that almost everyone who merely touched this yellow cake didn't die instantly.
If I had a cup of 238 here, I would die before I finished that sentence.
If they had, they might have been able to think of some military use for this instant yellow death powder in World War II. Further, I've actually got to confess, I've actually handled yellow cake. This is this uranium oxide in exactly the fashion stated here.
That is uranium nitrate. There you go.
Indeed, it's now over 10 years since I handled this uranium oxide like this, and I'm still not instantly dead. See, it turns out that this yellow powder that didn't cause instant death was kind of colourful, and so they started using this chemical in glazes for plates and the such like. You see, while uranium is actually radioactive, it's a weak alpha emitter. Alphas have lousy penetrating power, which means you can handle things like this with gloves with essentially no ill effects. What I mean by uranium is a weak alpha emitter per nucleus is it doesn't give off much radiation that quickly, that it's got a half-life of about 5 billion years. That means in the entire history of the Earth, only about half of the original uranium that was here has decayed. And now just compare that to the same amount of, say, iodine-131, which would release about the same amount of radiation in 8 days.
Yeah, so it's just another way to get us scared into giving them more money. So we're giving them hundreds of billions of dollars in this space race that America and Russia were doing, and they also did the Cold War, so they scared us into this nuclear scare and then stole a bunch more money to build fake nuclear weapons. And so yeah, nuclear weapons don't exist as such. The tests that you've seen, the very early ones like you were talking about, are clearly fake, just done on models. Some of the later tests were done using stacked dynamite. You just get a shitload of dynamite and blow it all up, and it makes the mushroom cloud, does the whole thing. And what they do is they'd tell one team that, they'd have a bunch of people 20 miles away, say army guys watching, doing the test, and then you've got over on one island these people stacking dynamite, saying that we're doing this for comparative purposes, and the real nuke's going to be over on that island. Meanwhile, they got another team over on that island stacking dynamite for comparative purposes, and the real nuke's going to be on the other island. So they even have military men stacking dynamite that they know is being used for these supposed nuclear explosions, but they believe that they've seen a real nuke, even though they tell them to cover your eyes and put your head in your laps as it happens. You don't see anything until the smoke clears afterwards. But yeah, a lot of military men will swear, up and down that nukes must exist because they were there at some of those tests, and it's just dynamite. They do it beneath water by stacking dynamite in submarines, and you can do it up in the air as well. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki nukes, you can see that they're clearly two superimposed explosions, one on top of each other. There's two smoke plumes made to look like they're one. I actually used this technique several times. If you look at this nuke footage, there's if you go to my website, Nuclear Weapons Do Not Exist, you'll see these 3 documentaries that expose the thing completely. And so not only do so for instance, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, what happened is that they were firebombed. So the cities were leveled just like Tokyo was firebombed, and the damage is comparable. But they claim that it all happened from one blast. But this is clearly not true, because flowers and plants started growing within a month, and they say nuclear radiation would exist for hundreds, thousands of years and would cause birth defects and everything. But nowadays, Hiroshima's a bustling city. Everyone's living there. Everything's growing there. Radiation's not a problem. There is some radiation after any explosion, so you would be able to go there with a Geiger counter and get some radiation, especially right afterwards, but it dies down quite quickly. And nuclear power, one of the most prominent nuclear physicists in America, he's dead now, Galen Windsor. He was involved in setting up most of the nuclear power plants in America. And he went all over America for years giving this lecture about how
nuclear power is just the most expensive and effective way to boil water, and they're essentially steam plants, and that's all it is. The nuclear component that supposedly causes all this radioactive waste that needs to be, hazmat dealt with, and they drill holes into bedrock and put the nuclear waste deep under the earth, and they've got all these crazy regulations. He says, when we were first working with nuclear material, uranium, plutonium, we held it in our hands, and if some of it got hot, we'd throw it in the water, and that was it. No problem. He said, I would bathe, I would swim in the pool there that we would throw the radiated metals into, no problem. People thought he was crazy. He started drinking a glass of water from it every day, no problems. And then in his lecture, he started eating radioactive waste. So you can see on YouTube, type in Galen Windsor, and he'll take out a Geiger counter, show you some radioactive material. He'll take it out of a tube, and he'll say, I've just caused an EPA, if the EPA was in here, we'd have to clear out this whole area for half a mile, and people would have to come in with hazmat suits, blah, blah, and then he puts it back in the tube, and there's some left over on his hand. So then he licks his hand, shows the waste on his tongue, swallows it, and says, I've been doing this for years. And so the idea is just another fear campaign. And that's why they get the military involved in all these nuclear power plants and the nuclear weapons. It's to siphon off money, keep us afraid, and keep us playing off one another. Everybody thinks that, Russia and America are enemies, and that the Cold War is real and the space race is real. But it's all just, they're all like WWE. It's like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man. They're all paid by Vince McMahon. They all go out to eat together. If you're high up in politics anywhere, for sure you're part of this brotherhood that controls everything. There's no independent man at the head of any state. And if he was, what's he doing?
Chris here from Hoaxbusters Call. This piece of footage here is from the Atomic Filmmakers documentary. I'll put a link to it in the description. Let's just take a look at some of the footage that they used in this film. Let's take a look at this explosion here. I mean, does this look real to you? Let's freeze it here. It is not, that is not real. I mean, look at that. That's not real footage of an atomic bomb. That is Hollywood special effects. It's, it's pretty good for its day, but I mean, come on, look at this. What I really wanted to examine was this piece of footage here. And let's watch this. Okay, the bomb goes off. Let's give this a little bit of a closer look, shall we? Something just ain't right here. Okay, the bomb goes off. Now check out this area right here. That white flash, that part of the explosion. Now let's keep an eye on that as I run this in slow motion here. Now watch this. Watch how it stays static as the rest of the explosion encloses around it. That's not possible. Watch it again here in slow motion. And reverse it. Look at that little blast in the corner. Look at that. It doesn't change. This is some kind of layering special effect. Some double exposure effect. Yeah, just look at that. I mean, just look at it. I mean, look at the... Also pay attention to the little puffy clouds right above this so-called mushroom cloud and how they're not even affected. Just rewatch it again and take note of that too. Just watch Atomic Filmmakers. They admit that this footage came out of Lookout Mountain, which employed Hollywood producers and people in the industry to...
We must be ready for a new danger. The atomic bomb. First, you have to know what happens when an atomic bomb explodes. You will know when it comes. We hope it never comes, but we must get ready. It looks something like this. There is a bright flash, brighter than the sun, brighter than anything you've ever seen. If you were not ready and did not know what to do, it could hurt you in different ways. It could knock you down hard or throw you against a tree or a wall. It is such a big explosion, it can smash in buildings and knock signboards over and break windows all over town. But if you duck and cover like Bert, you will be much safer. You know how bad sunburn can feel. The atomic bomb flash could burn you worse than a terrible sunburn, especially where you're not covered. Now, you and I don't have shells to crawl into like Bert the Turtle, so we have to cover up in our own way. First, you duck, and then you cover. And very tightly, you cover the back of your neck and your face. Duck and cover underneath a table or desk or anything else close by. You may be in your schoolyard playing when the signal comes. That signal means to stop whatever you are doing and get to the nearest safe place fast. Always remember, the flash of an atomic bomb can come at any time, no matter where you may be.
Se as bombas atômicas de Herbert George Wells não existiram, então o que destruiu Hiroshima e Nagasaki? Vamos dar uma olhada no resultado. Seria esta Hiroshima? Ou esta? Ou ainda esta? Novamente, qual a diferença entre as bombas atômicas de Herbert Wells e as bombas de fogo tradicionais? Quando dizemos bombardeio de fogo, ou firebombing, ou bombardeio de carpete, carpet bombing, queremos dizer que o terreno foi alvejado com M47s e M69s. De acordo com a Wikipedia, a bomba M47 também pode ser usada como um dispositivo incendiário. Uma mistura de borracha e gasolina pode ser usada em campo para produzir uma bomba incendiária rudimentar. Uma mistura de fósforo branco e gasolina gelatinosa também produz uma mistura inflamável. E também a respeito da M69, é uma bomba incendiária que foi usada em ataques aéreos no Japão e na China durante a Segunda Guerra Mundial, incluindo o bombardeio de Tóquio em 1945. A bomba usava napalm como enchimento incendiário, melhorando os designs interiores que usavam enchimentos de termite ou magnésio, que queimavam mais intensamente, mas eram menos eficientes em termos de energia e peso, e eram mais frágeis de extinguir. Uma M47 é uma bomba de óleo gelatinosa de 45 kg, e cada bombardeiro B-29 carregava 182 delas. Uma M69 nada mais é do que uma bomba de gasolina gelatinosa de 2,72 kg, 1.520 por aeronave. E também alguns B-29 carregavam altos explosivos para deter os bombeiros japoneses. É mais fácil contar as maiores cidades que os Estados Unidos não bombardearam. Uma delas é Kyoto. Por que o governo dos Estados Unidos, controlado pelos zionistas, gastou 2 bilhões de dólares em 1942 com essas bombas atômicas caríssimas de Herbert Wells, se bombardeio de carpete funcionava bem? Por quê? Para amedrontar a população mundial e os governar pelo medo, com certeza. Hiroshima e Nagasaki foram escolhidas porque estavam entre as últimas cidades em pé e eram, na maioria das vezes, feitas de madeira. Um incêndio poderia incinerá-las ao ponto de parecerem vaporizadas por uma bomba atômica. Mas talvez nossos olhos nos enganem, talvez precisemos de depoimentos de uma testemunha ocular.
With his background as a combat pilot, aeronautical designer, engineer, manufacturer, and military strategist, Major Seversky's advanced viewpoint and opinions are of vital importance to every citizen.
Depois de visitar as principais áreas do Pacífico, cheguei ao Japão. Comecei o estudo do qual fui designado fazendo um tour aéreo das ilhas de Honshu e Kyushu, que abrangem a maior porção do Japão industrial. Voei sobre Tóquio, Yokohama, Yokosuka, Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe, Akashi e dezenas de outras cidades e vilas que foram sujeitas a intenso ataque aéreo. Algumas delas estão tão próximas que parecem sítios industriais quase contínuos. Todas essas áreas de aniquilação apresentavam aproximadamente o mesmo padrão visual. As cidades menores foram totalmente incendiadas. Visto de cima, a cor predominante era o rosado. efeito produzido pelas pilhas de cinzas e entulhos misturados com metal enferrujado. Tapetes rosados semelhantes, causados por carpet bombing, foram espalhados nas cidades maiores, exceto que entre eles havia grandes e pequenos edifícios modernos de concreto em estrutura de fábrica, pontes e outros objetos ilesos que resistiram ao impacto. Muitos dos edifícios, é claro, foram destruídos pelo fogo, mas isso não era aparente do ar. Eu estava amarrado em minha primeira visão a respeito de uma cidade destruída por uma bomba atômica. Preparado para os sítios radicalmente novos, sugeridos pelas descrições empolgantes que li e ouvi, qual foi meu espanto? Hiroshima, vista de cima, parecia exatamente igual a todas as outras cidades incendiadas que observei. Existia um bloco rosado familiar por volta de 3 quilômetros de diâmetro. Estava pontilhado de árvores cortadas e postes telefônicos. Apenas uma das 20 pontes da cidade caiu. O aglomerado de edifícios modernos de Hiroshima no centro da cidade ficou de pé. Era óbvio que a explosão não poderia ter sido tão poderosa quanto fomos levados a acreditar. Foi uma explosão extensa em vez de intensiva. Ouvi falar de edifícios instantaneamente consumidos por um calor sem precedentes. Aqui eu vi o prédio estruturalmente intacto e mais, mastros de bandeiras intactos, para-raios, grades pintadas, sinais de precaução sobre o ar e outros objetos comparativamente frágeis. Na ponte T, o ponto-alvo da bomba atômica, procurei o ponto onde tudo presumivelmente foi vaporizado em um piscar de olhos. Não estava lá, ou em qualquer outro lugar. Não consegui encontrar vestígios de fenômenos incomuns. O que eu vi foi uma réplica de Yokohama ou Osaka, ou subúrbios de Tóquio. A receita familiar de uma área de casas de madeira e tijolos consumidos por um fogo incontrolável. Por toda parte eu via troncos de árvores carbonizados e sem folhas, pedaços de madeira queimados e não queimados. O fogo foi intenso o suficiente para dobrar e torcer calhas de aço e derreter o vidro até que escorresse como lava, assim como em outras cidades japonesas. Os prédios de concreto mais próximos do centro da explosão, alguns a apenas alguns quarteirões do centro da explosão, não apresentaram danos estruturais. Até cornijas, copas e delicadas decorações externas estavam intactas. O vidro da janela foi quebrado, é claro, mas as esquadrias de painel único mantiveram-se firmes. Apenas molduras de janela de 2 ou mais painéis foram torcidas e dobradas. O impacto da explosão, portanto, não poderia ter sido incomum. Se essas observações de Seversky tiverem mérito, isso faria com que 69 cidades japonesas fossem fogo-bombardeadas, ou você poderia acreditar na narrativa oficial de que o B-29 antigamente voou 31 mil pés no ar e jogou a bomba de urânio chamada de Little Boy, que detonou a 1.900 pés sobre Hiroshima às 8h16 da manhã de 6 de agosto e matou 8 mil pessoas instantaneamente. Além disso, você acreditaria que o Boxcar B-29 voou uma altitude de 30 mil pés com a bomba de plutônio Fat Man, que detonou 1.650 pés sobre Nagasaki às 11h02 da manhã de 9 de agosto entre as fábricas siderúrgicas da Mitsubishi no sul e a Mitsubishi Urakami no norte, e supostamente matou 40 mil pessoas. O general Crawford Sams acreditou na história, mas não inteiramente. Sams era médico, um dos 6 homens que comandaram o Japão sob o comando de Douglas MacArthur, de 1945 a 1952. Ele acreditava que a bomba atômica existia, mas indicou que não era muito eficaz. Ele revelou em uma entrevista de 1979 que recebeu ordens de exagerar o seu poder.
It wasn't feeling like putting in the publicity a bomb went off and a city disappeared. No such thing happened. That was the propaganda for deterrence.
Há uma carta trazida por este primeiro grupo que veio das Filipinas para o Japão comigo, do Projeto Manhattan, em que o presidente procurava uma nova dissuasão contra a guerra futura, porque o poder aéreo falhou em impedir a Segunda Guerra Mundial. Você sabe, se você tiver outra guerra, o poder aéreo destruirá a civilização. Mas falhou porque nem mesmo colocou a Alemanha de joelhos. O levantamento estratégico de bombas ali mostrou que a produção militar atualmente aumentou, na verdade, durante nossos bombardeios. Então, o objetivo dessa instrução chamada Carta de Instrução era: você vai brincar com os efeitos devastadores da bomba atômica. Ok, então fui eu que estabeleci o prazo dessa vez. Qualquer um que esteve em Hiroshima e morreu em 6 meses, ou foi atropelado por uma bicicleta, ou algo assim, seria acreditado à bomba atômica. Atribuir a causa da morte a um grande evento para propaganda. Onde já ouvimos isso antes? Sands continua acrescentando que um de nós, tal de Norman Trenton, conseguiu um padre lá para dizer que acha que 100 mil pessoas morreram quando a bomba explodiu. Bem, não foi bem assim. Nunca houve 100 mil pessoas que morreram. Ok, então quem era esse padre jesuíta? Por que ele é o porta-voz para a farsa da bomba nuclear?
I was in my room, which faces the valley, and suddenly I saw a light, like magnesium light, flashlight, which filled the whole valley. And looking out of my window to find out the reason for this peculiar phenomena, I saw nothing besides this light. And turning from the window to the door of my room, I heard a crash. It may have been 10 seconds after seeing the light, the flashlight. And immediately I was covered with splinters of the window frames and glass sticking into the walls and actually my flesh itself. After a while, we saw a procession of people coming from the outskirts of the city up the valley. Many of them, most of them, were wounded, especially the parts of the body which were not covered by clothes, like hands, feet, back. All of us who lived through this experience at the spot estimate the numbers of deaths at least as 100,000.
Mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
E esse porta-voz nem consegue lembrar de suas falas.
I'm just standing by right now.
What is your opinion as to the story that the ruins of the city emitted deadly rays?
Well, I think that it's just a rumor. Because I myself and others of us have worked in the city itself immediately after the explosion for several hours, and we felt no ill effect at all.
Se não havia radiação nociva, então não era nuclear, era? Então, se Hiroshima e Nagasaki foram fogo bombardeadas, quando o foram? Para Hiroshima, a resposta curta é a noite anterior. Para essa informação, nos voltamos para a série de 7 volumes intitulada As Forças Aéreas do Exército na Segunda Guerra Mundial. Foi publicada entre 1948 e 1958 como um lançamento oficial do Escritório de Pesquisa Histórica da Força Aérea. Os editores da série foram Wesley Frank Craven e James Lee Cate. Eles começaram a trabalhar na série durante a guerra com a bênção do presidente Franklin Roosevelt. No volume 5 existe uma tabela detalhando as missões incendiárias contra cidades secundárias. Se descermos, podemos ver que Imabari foi bombardeada no dia 5 de agosto. Imabari fica somente a 56 quilômetros de Hiroshima. De acordo com o livro de história de 1977, Ruína dos Ares, hoje à noite, como de costume, os monitores tinham indicações de que o Japão estava prestes a enfrentar outra série brutal de ataques. 30 bombardeiros estavam a caminho do Japão para lançar minas no mar interior. 65 bombardeiros estavam vindo para bombardear Saga. 102 aviões estavam prestes a lançar um ataque incendiário a Maebashi. 261 bombardeiros estavam indo para a área de Nishinomiya Mikage. 111 bombardeiros estavam com destino a Ube. 66 para Imabari. 66 bombardeiros foram para Imabari na noite de 5 de agosto e 111 bombardeiros para Ube. Imabari foi bombardeada 2 vezes antes. uma vez no dia 26 de abril e a segunda vez no dia 8 de maio. O livro Inferno, do autor Edwin Hoyt, confirma esses ataques, mas também deixa dúvida se Imabari foi completamente apagada no momento que rolava o dia 5. Se isso for verdade, tornaria desnecessário bombardear Imabari. Hoyt incluiu a conversa em um trem que mostra que todos os 66 aviões passaram sobre Imabari e bombardearam Hiroshima. Na conversa, um homem percebe que Imabari não está listado no horário, enquanto outro senhor afirma que Imabari pegou fogo. E então seu pai tinha um negócio de cortinas que queimou também. Ele disse que todo mundo estava morto, mas não havia parada de trem em Imabari porque não havia estação de trem. De acordo com a revista japonesa História Moderna da Prefeitura de Ehime, emitida em 29 de fevereiro de 1988, na madrugada de 8 de maio do mesmo ano, 1945, houve um segundo ataque aéreo e a área ao redor da estação de Imabari foi atingida por ondas 8 vezes antes e depois, matando 29 pessoas, ferindo gravemente 4 pessoas e danificando 140 casas. Mas a cidade inteira não pegou fogo e, de acordo com a revista Imabari City War Disaster Reconstruction de 1971, a cidade foi realmente bombardeada em 5 de agosto. O terceiro ataque aéreo durou muito tempo, das 11h50 da noite do dia 5 de agosto a 1h30 da manhã do dia seguinte, 6 de agosto. Na noite de 4 de agosto, o bombardeio da cidade de Imabari foi anunciado por folhetos lançados do avião inimigo. Em 5 de agosto, o som da explosão se aproximou fortemente do lado superior da cidade, com medo e ansiedade dos cidadãos, e se tornou uma chuva de fogo com o som da explosão em cerca de 60 grandes bombardeiros. Foi atacada por bombas incendiárias e pequenas bombas cerca de 10 vezes, por cerca de 1h30. Bombardeios planejados foram realizados um após o outro com sons explosivos e flashes e, em seguida, cerca de 10 minutos, toda a cidade. O grande incêndio convidou um grande vento como um tufão, fez barulho e moveu a terra e os cidadãos inalaram a fumaça. Neste dia, o centro da cidade de Imabari foi quase destruído. Entre 340 e 454 pessoas foram mortas. 34.200 pessoas, o que representa 63% da população de 54.341, foram afetadas. 5,98 milhões de metros quadrados viraram terra arrasada. O problema aqui é que, apesar de Imabari ter sido bombardeada de 5 a 6 de agosto, não seriam necessários 66 bombardeiros para causar esse tipo de dano a essa pequena cidade e somente matar 454 pessoas. Ainda é possível que alguns desses bombardeiros tenham sobrevoado a cidade e bombardeado Hiroshima. No entanto, proponho que os verdadeiros bombardeiros de Hiroshima eram os B-29s indo para Ube na mesma noite. Se nos voltarmos para o livro Ruína do Ar e compararmos cada cidade atacada em 5 de agosto com a tabela da Segunda Guerra Mundial das Forças Aéreas do Exército, devemos esperar ver todas as cidades da lista. Temos Saga, Maebashi, Nishinomiya, Imabari, mas não temos Ube. Quando foi a última vez que bombardearam Ube? 1º de julho. O Napalm criou uma tempestade de fogo. Então, onde desapareceram aqueles 111 bombardeiros que voaram de Guam na noite de 5 de agosto? De acordo com o livro Assalto Final ao Sol Nascente, de Chester W. Marshall, esses aviões tinham como alvo a refinaria de petróleo de Ube. A fábrica de Ube foi uma das poucas fábricas que permaneceram em alta produção no Japão até que nós, Bombardeiro 315, aparecêssemos. Não só foi destruída em 5 de agosto, mas também afundou quando os diques circundantes foram comprometidos e a área inundada. Aparentemente, uma refinaria de petróleo é suficiente para garantir 111 bombardeiros, mas não o suficiente para garantir um lugar na tabela de cidades bombardeadas da Força Aérea do Exército. Quão grande era essa refinaria de petróleo? Aqui está o antes, aqui está o depois. É uma área de 281 hectares, 111 bombardeiros para 281 acres de terra e terra combustível. É isso? Eu acho que não. Onde está Ube no mapa? 121 quilômetros de Hiroshima. Recapitulando, foram necessários 111 bombardeiros para destruir uma refinaria de petróleo e 66 para atacar a pequena cidade de Imabari? Precisamos dar uma olhada mais de perto. Para a comparação, vamos olhar para Tóquio. Em 10 de março, foram necessários 279 B-29s para incendiar 10.112 acres em Tóquio e matar 100 mil pessoas. São 279 aviões que incendiaram 10 mil acres para matar 100 mil pessoas. Em Imabari foram 66 aviões para 1.477 acres que mataram 454 pessoas. Proporcionalmente, com o número de aviões e acres queimados, o dano a Imabari teria requerido uns 40 B-29s. 66 menos 40 nos deixa com 26 aviões restantes. Vamos colocar esse número de lado agora. Hiroshima tinha 13 km² de danos de incêndio. Isso é igual a 3.200 acres. Se compararmos aos números de Tóquio, cada B-29 deve ser capaz de danificar 36 acres. Tornou um mar de Se pegar fogo. Os 3.200 acres de Hiroshima e dividir por 36 acres da capacidade de incêndio dos B-29s, teremos 89 B-29s. Seriam necessários 89 B-29s para fazer Hiroshima parecer Tóquio. 26 da missão de Imabari, mais 63 da missão de Ube, ou, por uma questão de sigilo, tire todos os 89 de Ube. 111 menos 89 seriam 22 e 22 B-29 seriam suficientes para explodir a refinaria. Os Estados Unidos tinham superioridade aérea, existiu quase nenhuma resistência da parte do Japão nessa época. Agora, no que diz respeito ao sigilo, cada B-29 tinha uma tripulação de 11 homens. Somente o piloto precisaria saber para onde está indo. E nem mesmo todos os pilotos. Muitos seguiriam o líder do esquadrão, porque estão voando à noite, e a maioria da tripulação são jovens da idade da faculdade. Não notariam necessariamente para onde estavam indo. Afinal, eles estão bombardeando o Japão há 1 ano. É só mais um dia. A tripulação que deveria saber? Bom, mesmo o mais estúpido dos cúmplices consegue se calar sob ameaça de morte. O fato permanece. O dano no solo não justifica o poder de fogo no ar. E esses aviões adicionais não podem explicar onde estavam tão cedo quanto 7 horas antes de Hiroshima ser bombardeada. Eles não estavam voando em círculos. Só para realmente validar o ponto, vamos a uma segunda confirmação e uma terceira. Essa tabela é do livro de F.J. Bradley, Nenhum Alvo Estratégico Faltante. Ela afirma que 106 aviões foram mandados a Ube, mas ainda é o suficiente para compensar os danos de Hiroshima e da refinaria. De acordo com os documentos da história narrativa do 16º Grupo de Bombardeio, que era uma das 4 unidades ligadas à ala de bombardeio 315, esta foi a missão mais espetacular que o 16º Grupo participou. A empresa de liquefação Ubeco, importante porque era uma unidade de produção sintética, já havia sido invadida em 22 e 23 de julho e havia sido danificada em 31%. O ataque contra a usina foi lançado nos dias 5 e 6. Curiosamente, a ala de bombardeio 315 foi equipada com os novos B-29Bs. O B-29B foi uma aeronave de produção limitada, uma variante da superfortaleza B-29, construído exclusivamente por Bell Atlanta. Foi retirado o máximo de artilharia defensiva e teve todo o armamento defensivo com cauda removido, aumentando capacidade para bombas adicionais incendiárias ou altamente explosivas. A eliminação das torres e do sistema de canhão computadorizado geral elétrico associado aumentou a velocidade máxima da superfortaleza para 586 km por hora a 25 mil pés, fazendo o B-29 ser adequado para ataques de bombardeio rápidos sem escolta. Portanto, o B-29B é mais rápido e repleto de bombas incendiárias. E quase todos os B-29 na ala 315 de bombardeiros eram B-29Bs, enviados para danificar uma planta já danificada. Estes são os bombardeiros de Hiroshima. Até que horas duraram esses bombardeios? Vamos guardar para uma outra hora. Mas em Nagasaki, existem várias possibilidades. É dito que Nagasaki foi fogo bombardeada na noite de 8, 9 de agosto e eles simplesmente não mantiveram um registro disso. Ninguém sabia quando ou onde a próxima bomba atômica seria lançada e ainda havia fogo-bombardeios acontecendo na época. De acordo com as Forças Aéreas do Exército na Segunda Guerra Mundial, volume 5, enquanto o mundo esperava por uma resposta de Suzuki, a 20ª Força Aérea continuou martelando o Japão, despachando em 7 de agosto uma missão de 131 aviões contra Tokugawa, um grande incendiário diurno contra Yawata no dia 8 e na noite seguinte uma missão de mineração e 2 ataques à bomba. Também no dia 8, a 509 enviou 6 aviões para lançar bombas de abóbora em vários alvos. Onde estavam esses vários alvos? O grupo composto 509 foi aquele que lançou as bombas atômicas. Nenhum livro especifica. Mas por que mencionar vários alvos? Meu palpite mais forte é que a Força Aérea forneceu aos editores essas informações para se resguardar no caso de um tripulante anos depois dizer: "Ei, estávamos fazendo bombardeios na noite anterior a Nagasaki e isso não está nos livros de história." Outra possibilidade é que Nagasaki tenha sido fogo-bombardeada na noite de 5 a 6 de agosto, 3 dias antes da detonação oficial da Fat Man, de 9 de agosto, às 11h02. Eles podem ter dito aos bombardeiros que iriam bombardear Saga e, em vez disso, fazer com que os líderes de voo bombardeassem Nagasaki. Nagasaki sofreu 2.240 acres de dano, que exigiria 62 B-29s. Quantos voaram para Saga na noite de 5 de agosto? 65 B-29 da ala 58 de bombardeiro voaram de Tinian. Saga foi realmente bombardeada? Sim, foi. Quanto dano a cidade de Saga sofreu? O ataque aéreo em Saga durou das 23 horas do dia 5 de agosto de 1945 até cerca de 1 da manhã do dia 6 de agosto. Morreram 61 pessoas, queimaram 443 casas e lançaram 458,9 toneladas de bombas. Não temos uma área em acres, mas podemos comparar esses números com os de Imabari. 454 pessoas foram mortas, 8.199 casas foram queimadas e 510 toneladas de bombas foram derrubadas. Os B-29s que atacaram Imabari faziam parte do mesmo Esquadrão 58 de bombas que voou de Tinian. Os danos nas casas é suspeito, mas a cidade de Saga estava em um estado de total blackout antes da investida. Folhetos foram lançados na noite anterior, muito parecido com o Imabari. Mas, com apagão ou não, Saga pode ter sido agraciada antes que a tripulação se dirigisse para Nagasaki, a 67 km de distância. Os pilotos e tripulantes teriam acatado as ordens e retornado para Tinian, nas Ilhas Marianas. Vamos à nossa quarta possibilidade. Oficialmente, Nagasaki já tinha sido bombardeada. Em 1º de agosto de 45, um total de 50 bombardeiros, incluindo 24 B-24s e 26 B-25s, lançaram 112 toneladas de bombas, principalmente em fábricas de munição na cidade. Grandes danos foram infligidos ao estaleiro Mitsubishi Nagasaki, o principal alvo do ataque aéreo, bem como a siderúrgica Mitsubishi, o Nagasaki Medical College e outras instalações importantes. É o quê? A siderúrgica da Mitsubishi foi onde lançaram a bomba atômica. Sim, isso aí não é tão misterioso. De acordo com as forças aéreas do exército na Segunda Guerra Mundial, Nagasaki foi atingida em 5 ocasiões entre 10 de agosto de 1944 e 1º de agosto de 1945, 2 vezes por B-29s, incluindo um ataque casual fenomenalmente eficaz de um único avião, e 3 vezes por bombardeiros da 7ª Força Aérea de Okinawa. Entretanto, espera-se que acreditemos na história ridícula de que o capitão Frederick Bock, em vez de pilotar seu próprio B-29, em um dos dias mais importantes da história da aviação, trocou de avião com o Major Charles Sweeney. Então, Sweeney pilotou o boxcar com uma bomba atômica a bordo e o Capitão Bock pilotou o avião de Sweeney, o grande artista? Vamos lá, de acordo com a série de livros didáticos aprovados pela Força Aérea, através de um erro curioso, causado talvez pela remoção dos nomes dos aviões de ataque, o comunicado oficial afirmava que o grande artista carregou a bomba no dia 9 de agosto, e esse erro foi perpetuado na maioria dos relatos publicados, mesmo aqueles escritos por testemunhas oculares. Em 1946, a discussão de um plano para aposentar o grande artista com uma peça de museu revelou o erro. A evidência dos números de série no relatório da missão é irrefutável e foi confirmada ao autor pelo Capitão Bock, depois de contatar seu manipulador, claro, que explicou que ele trocou de B-29 com Sweeney para aquela missão. Aparentemente, a mudança foi para evitar a necessidade de transferir os instrumentos científicos. Tem um caroçaço nesse angu aí. Os instrumentos científicos já estavam a bordo do grande artista quando bombardearam Hiroshima. Eles não precisaram da transferência. O piloto nem conhece o avião em que estava 5 dias depois do ocorrido?
This is Major Charles W. Sweeney of Quincy, Massachusetts, pilot of the great artiste, the second B-29 to drop an atomic bomb on the Empire. Major Sweeney, give us some of the details of the whole flight.
We were briefed on, of course, a primary and a secondary target as usual.
This is Captain Kermit K. Behan of Houston, Texas, bombardier of the great artiste. Captain Behan, what was your most outstanding experience on this historic flight?
I suppose it was when the clouds opened up over the target at Nagasaki.
Agora, a arte do nariz não foi pintada no avião até depois do bombardeio. Mas o piloto ainda deveria saber em que aeronave está e por que diabos teve uma coletiva de imprensa para uma missão ultra secreta antes que o Enola Gay estivesse pronto para decolar.
After a photographing session that made us feel like a Hollywood premiere, we got off at about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Então, se você engoliu essa merda, espera-se que acreditemos que a cidade-alvo, em 9 de agosto, também foi trocada. Kokura foi o alvo principal no dia 9, mas estava coberta de nuvens e o bombardeio em Nagasaki só foi possível por causa de uma quebra de última hora nas nuvens, pouco antes do B-29 ser preparado para voltar com a bomba. O demônio está nos detalhes, pessoal. Quanto mais detalhes eles têm, mais eles não podem escapar da verdade. Nagasaki foi danificada no dia 1º, danificada no dia 5 e terminada de 8 a 9 de agosto. O plano era Nagasaki o tempo todo.